Have you ever wondered where the very first ghost story came from? I'm not talking about some gothic novel or a flickering old movie. I mean, the first one ever. Well, we're going to go way back to the dawn of civilization in ancient Mesopotamia, to uncover the oldest recorded encounter with a ghost. And what it tells us about our own fears is pretty profound. So let's take a trip 3,500 years into the past and meet the world's oldest ghost. Just think about that. This story has survived for over 3,500 years. Some scribe pressing a reed into a wet clay tablet wasn't just recording a king's decree or a business deal. No, they were writing down a chilling encounter with something from beyond the grave. This isn't just some old folktale. It's literally the foundation for a belief that still haunts us today. And to really get it, we need to step into their world. So, first off, you might be surprised to hear that for the ancient Babylonians, ghosts weren't just folklore. They were a genuine medical issue. Seriously. Scribes would document things like headaches or even paralysis and diagnose them as being caused by a spirit. You might get an official diagnosis of hand of a ghost, which meant they believed a spirit was literally physically messing with you. And get this, seeing a ghost wasn't always some terrifying, soul-shaking event. A lot of the time, it was just annoying. An inconvenience. An unwanted visitor that you had to deal with, sure, but sometimes on the same level as finding a mouse in your kitchen. The supernatural was just a normal part of their daily grind. And finally, they weren't just telling scary stories around the fire. They had a whole system for this stuff. They had highly trained specialists, these scholar priests who were absolute masters of sacred texts. These weren't just random spells. They were incredibly detailed procedures, written down in cuneiform manuals, explaining exactly how to diagnose and banish a specific ghost. This was organized professional ghost hunting thousands of years ago. So with that almost scientific approach in mind, let's look at the source for this whole story. And the evidence isn't just some dusty old text. It's a real physical object you can go and see for yourself. This is it, right here. It's a humble-looking piece of clay, no bigger than your smartphone. But etched right onto its surface is the oldest known drawing of a ghost. This thing dates all the way back to ancient Babylon, and it's a direct window into what people feared and believed in a world that's long since vanished. It's part instruction manual for an exorcist and part ancient art. The picture itself tells a really cool story. It's faded, but you can make out this skinny, bearded male figure, and if you look really close, you can see his hands are actually tied. He's being led by a rope held by a woman who's guiding him along. The cuneiform text on the tablet explains the ritual. It's a guide for how to get rid of a lonely, annoying ghost by finding him a companion, the woman, to lead him back to the netherworld where he belongs. It's as much about compassion as it is about exorcism. Now, this tablet isn't just some random one-off. It's part of a massive, deeply held belief system. To the Babylonians, ghosts weren't just spooks. They had a name and a very specific place in the universe. They called them the etemmu. So, the etemmu was essentially the part of you that lived on after you died. Your spirit, your shade, complete with all your memories and your personality. The idea was, when you died, your etemmu was created, and it was supposed to journey to the netherworld, their version of the land of the dead. But that journey didn't always go according to plan. And here's the crucial part. An etemmu usually only became a problem when the living dropped the ball. A proper burial? That was non-negotiable. And your living relatives had a sacred duty to leave you offerings of food and water. If you died a violent death, or worse, if you were forgotten because you had no kids to look after your memory, your spirit was basically doomed to wander the earth, restless and pretty ticked off. It was like a contract between the living and the dead, and there were serious consequences if you broke it. So what did they think these spirits were actually like? Well, the descriptions in their ancient texts feel incredibly modern. They talked about them being insubstantial, like a gust of wind you can't see but you can feel, or like a shadow you just catch at the corner of your eye. And yet, somehow, they could still be recognizable as the person they used to be. It's this amazing idea of a ghost being both totally otherworldly and deeply personally familiar. Now, if you had a restless etemmu hanging around your house, you didn't just have to put up with it. No, you called in a professional. You called in an ancient exorcist. This was the job of the ashipu. And we're not talking about some village magician chanting nonsense. These were highly educated scholar priests, basically academics trained in temple libraries. They were a combination of a doctor, a therapist, and an exorcist, all rolled into one. They were masters of a huge body of written knowledge on how to deal with the supernatural.
And the Ashipu came prepared. They had a whole toolkit. They'd bring their reference manuals, these cuneiform tablets with the right incantations for the job. They'd use little figurines to act as a body for the spirit, to trap it. They had holy water and special clay for purification, offerings of food and incense, and they'd even use things like magic circles for protection. Every single tool had a precise purpose in a very structured ritual.
A typical exorcism was a very methodical, step-by-step process. First, they'd purify the space. Then, they'd make offerings to Shamash, the sun god, because he was the one who could see into the dark places, like the netherworld. And here's a twist I just love. They would often call on the patient's own ancestral ghosts, the happy, well-cared-for ones, to help them fight off the troublesome spirit. Only then would they recite the main incantation, and then seal the whole ritual with one last offering. And the words they used, they were so powerful and direct. Just listen to this translation from an ancient spell. Ghost who keeps appearing to me, do not approach, do not come close to my bed. May the wall hold you back. You can just feel the fear in that, can't you? The desperation, that raw human need to feel safe in your own home. This isn't just history, it's a voice, speaking to us right now across 3,500 years. So, why does any of this matter today? I mean, it's a fascinating story, but what's the takeaway? Well, it's because when you strip away the ancient names and the specific rituals, you find something at the core of this that is completely and totally universal. I mean, think about it. The things that made a ghost restless in ancient Babylon are the exact same themes that drive pretty much every ghost story we tell today. The spirit with unfinished business, the person who died violently and is looking for justice, the lonely soul who is terrified of being forgotten. This shared fear of being forgotten, of having an unresolved ending to your story, that's a fundamental part of being human, and it clearly hasn't changed one bit in millennia. So, in the end, it doesn't really matter if we call it a Babylonian etemmu or a modern-day poltergeist. The story is rooted in the exact same human anxieties, the need for closure and the fear of being forgotten. So, I have to ask you, do you believe in ghosts? And does knowing that people were dealing with this exact same belief 3,500 years ago, does that change anything for you? Does it make the idea feel more real, or maybe just more deeply human?